minutes, I will introduce you to our audience.
Okay.
Daniel is a globally recognized author, podcaster, and keynote speaker known for shaping inclusive workplace culture and leadership. He has addressed audiences worldwide, including government and corporate leaders, and was honored with the Ontario government's Amethyst Award for Public Service. As founder of Connect Ontario, his efforts earned international recognition for championing equality. With over 15 years in D&B and human rights, he brings expertise in coaching, strategic planning, and culture change. Denley holds degrees in engineering and theology, is a certified PMP, and shares insight through his books and podcast, The Coach Corner. That was an inspiring bio, Daniel, and the stage is all yours. You can proceed
Okay.
with your presentation now.
All right. Well, thank you, um, Melinda and team. And well, in my neck of the woods, it's afternoon, but wherever you are, good day to all of you. It's going to be a pleasure to share with you in terms of this idea of belonging at work and how leaders can build a home away from home. And so, as I get into it, for those who want to try to, I know, engage me on LinkedIn, whatever, I happily will do that, and you can find me there. But I also, in the intro, I do podcasts, and so a lot of these things I'll share with you. If you miss it or you say, "Hey, I wish you could expand on it more," you can find me on the Coach's Corner as well. So I just want to kind of lay that out there as well for all of you. Uh, as I kind of get into the oops. All right. As I now get into this idea, oh, there I am. Yeah. So here we are. And one of the biggest questions that are on the table in many workplaces today, especially if you're in the uh, areas of services, nevertheless, this idea of belonging at work. I guess the first question that folks will want to ask, does it even belong in the workplace? And you can answer that in the chat, because I know I've talked to some people, and maybe it could be just a North American team thing, but some parts of the world may say this is nonsense. It's Some will say poppycock, another foolishness. You can think of the synonym, but I want to just challenge people that I do think the workplace has evolved. I think the workplace has evolved such that belonging is an important mixture. It is an important element. It is the chemistry. It is the secret sauce that makes the company go. And I don't want people to lose sight of that. And you say, why do I say that? Because many of you, I undoubtedly watch sports. You watch sports, whether it be football, whether it be the soccer version, we call it in North America, or most people around the world will say football with the feet, or football throwing it, or basketball. You name the sport, the team sport. What is the common denominator with those teams that win, whether it be men or female? You hear all the time that we see each other as a family. Hear that? We see each other as a family. When the minute you hear family, right there, you're saying belonging. I belong here. And that the correlation between championships, high performance, it is that sense of, I feel like we're family. I feel like this is a home away from home. And of course, so if you downplay belonging and say, that's some nonsense, but you clap your team as they win the championship, you are living out of two sides of your mouth, my friend. We're contradicting ourselves, because really belonging does matter. And so these quotes here, that belonging, the elements of belonging, whether it be diversity, the elements of belonging, of inclusion, Those are part of it, but it's not the end all what makes belonging. Belonging is the sense that I feel connected to you and you feel connected to me. And I'll say more about that, but just understand it is a fundamental need for each and every one of us. How much is this a fundamental need? Well, one stat says like 40% of employees report feeling isolated at work, which negatively impacts engagement and commitment. And that companies foster belonging, see better job performance and lower turnover risk and few sick days. And I think we know this. As I said, you find a team that doesn't do well in sports, chances are if you go into the locker room, there's quite a little level of dysfunction. There's quite a level of disharmony. And we know this, and we say, move this person away, get this person in, because we know that the locker room needs the right chemistry. Bring this general manager in, leave this general manager out. So these things we know on a very practical level on the sports. But we forget that sports is a business too. They have to create the right culture. And so when we import it into our situation at work, you will recognize that as leaders, if you're not doing this, we're creating an environment where we are making ourselves or setting ourselves up to being second, third, or fourth place in whatever field you find yourself in. Even worse, we're setting up our people to not only fail, but to be sick. And this thing of belonging is so important that we lose sight, because if we were only working an hour at a time, just say an hour a day, then belonging, you say, why are we wasting time on that? The person who's with me is only working an hour a day. They're only working an hour a day. Why would I care about that? And you're right, I would agree with you. But our days are not an hour a day. For some of you, it's 7. For others, it's 8. Some of you laugh and say, 8, I wish I had that. I was on a good day. It's 9, it's 10, 11, and 12. You're saying that I spend more time with people who aren't my family, who aren't people in my blood. I'm spending more time with them than the own people in my home. And you're telling me belonging is not important? And you're asking me to be with you for maybe not only a year, 2, 3, or 4 years? It's important. And leaders, if you look at this chart from McKinsey and Company, you see there, if you look at the chart, that there's a discrepancy. And this was done about a few years ago. And I think maybe the discrepancy, the gap is closing, but I do think it's still relevant, because we don't really appreciate as leaders how important this thing of belonging is. That leaders on the x-axis see, hey, belonging is not as important. On the y-axis, employee says, no, belonging is truly important. If you look into that blue zone, where does belonging belong in the workplace? It belongs in the center. It belongs at the very core of who we are as people. And some of the things that the challenges in the world is because we've forgotten this very, very ancient, innate desire, propensity that we have. That is the reason that Maslow, on his hierarchy of needs, said this is the third most important quality after food, water, and shelter, belonging and love. And so if we as leaders are building a team and we do not make space for that and actually militate against it, we're actually setting up a position or a situation that we're going against the very innate desires of us as human beings. So this is kind of a serious thing, because we are wired for relationships. We are wired for community. We are wired for belonging. I know someone was asking, now, can you give me a truly a definition? I think sometimes when you're talking about things on a social relational level, it's always hard to codify and try to distill it in a few words. You know this. Try to give me the definition of love, right? It's not really easy. We know it inside, but we can't always articulate. But I'll do my best here to say that belonging is having a feeling of being home. I like to say away from home, which means you have a sense of identification with the in-group. And that's a sociological term, in-group, meaning that it's sometimes groups say it's us versus them. And if you say this is us and this is them, the in-group is the us and the them is the out-group. Now, we can have a conversation about that, even that terminology, because what do we say when we say us versus them? Because we create these barriers. But the point I want to share that the in-group is the us factor. And one thing, but the beautiful thing belonging is that sense that you feel like you belong to them and you feel that the them belongs to you. And that you fitting in, you being part of that collective, you have a role, you have a purpose to deliver on behalf of the team. And that group of individuals belong to you and shaping you and forming you and making you the best person that you can be. So how do we do this belonging? Well, there's sort of 3 principles I want to offer to you. 3 principles. And the first principle is about belonging at work, begins with inviting each other's story. I know some of you may be looking and say, why on earth does this gentleman is wearing a hat? We don't wear hats when you're presenting. Come on, take the hat off. Come on now. Maybe some of you are offended because there's a thing that people, you just don't do that. There was a decorum. And if you haven't thought about the hat being an issue, that's great. That's wonderful, because that's where you may want to be, not being distracted. But some of you maybe are. Maybe some of you grew up with those things. And I would just say, I would just offer that when we see things that look unorthodox, that look different, instead of rushing to judgment, why are you doing this? Why are you being this way? With that tone, I would offer that maybe it's a tone of less judgment, but more curiosity. Why are you wearing a hat? What's the purpose? Oh, thank you for asking. The purpose is it's really a way for me to identify with my father who passed away and love wearing these kind of hats. You see, once you understand the rationale, the story, you invite people in. And this is my story. And this is where my family is from. My racial group, yes, I'm Black, but I'm more than that. I'm Canadian. My ancestry is Jamaican, so I'm Jamaican Canadian. And I have family that were connected to Bob Marley, as you see on the right side of the screen. One of my cousins there helped started the Wailers with Bob Marley, Peter Tosh. Part of belonging is that you make space for someone like me to share my story, and you to sing with me. If you don't do that, we're going to have problems building that place of belonging. Belonging also have work practices both curiosity and vulnerability. You see some of these things on there, and yeah, history does matter. We're shaped by history, for better or for worse. And I would always want you to understand a little bit my history as much as I would understand your history. This is part of my history, being brought in chains over to North America. Now, we're a little different as people who are descendants of slaves within the Caribbean versus maybe South America or even America, North America. But we have a common experience in terms of being dehumanized, and my family being brought to Jamaica from Nigeria and the other parts of Western Africa by chains, laid out by sardines in a boat, either picking cotton in the US or picking sugar canes in the islands. You're like, what does sugar cane have to do with that? Well, if you like to have a good time in Jamaica or any parts of the Caribbean and you're sipping on some Captain Morgan or Ray and Nephew, yeah, that's the sugar that make those things. And that shapes us. That story shapes us, because from there, my work ethic comes from my family who's been bred in that sort of environment. So that matters. Your curiosity and my vulnerability does matter in the. But lastly, I also want to say we also recognize in belonging, it's not just about the work. The life and work together matters. Let me just kind of share with you a clip here. And I'm going to maybe stop presenting and reshare.
All rise.
Okay. I always appreciate sharing that clip because of the fact of that's my experience and journey. And for many men that look like me, that is the journey that we are. That's the journey that we all go through. We are moving through life, being always looked at, being questioned, being seen as an other. And he said, what does that have to do with belonging? When you as a leader can watch what's happening in the culture and say to this person, I saw what happened to this person, and I just want to know if you're okay. I want to know what's happening in the world is impacting you. I want to know a little bit of your life. Now, I know some people want to just talk about the weather. That's part of what's stuff happened outside of the office or outside of the workplace. Others may want to talk about did you have a barbecue? It's summertime, at least in this side of the globe. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. But when you are going around and skirting the real guts of the issue and saying that you know that my people live in this part of the world and they've been injured and impacted, and that once you sat and said, are you okay? At that point, I question, do I belong here? I even question you as a leader. Should I even be working for you? That's why it matters. So one of the things I have done is create a space for these things, because 10 years ago, actually more accurately, 13 years ago, I created a space called Connect Ontario. It was for Canadian public servants. I'm sure this could be helpful in the private sector, but I know in the public sector that these individuals are serving the public. And so if these individuals feel disconnected from what they do, how can public service create the best policy, deliver the best service for people within their jurisdiction. And we, myself being Canadian in Canada, I created this community. It is a community of belonging. Our community practice is belonging. We develop people's careers, but remember, Maslow's hierarchy of need, that's kind of like fourth. But what comes before that is belonging and love. And that's one of the reasons I created this community, to create a community that we can grow our career, speak to those who've been marginalized, and create a space of community, even more than ever before, because so many people feel dislocated and feel disenfranchised and feel like they're not part of a tribe, they're not part of a community, they're not part of a family. That's why I say it's right for you to be here. You look at this, I love the signature, the logo that we created. It doesn't seem much on the surface, but I created a C with an opening for people to come in to meet face to face, and then you have a smile. He said, why is this important? Why are you sharing this with me? Because many individuals, leaders come to my community to learn, how do we do belonging dealing? And I said, great, spend a year with us and we'll show you how. Remember the in-group, out-group? We don't try to create out-groups. We just try to create an in-group. But our identity is making space for the other. Making space for you. Maxime, Anouk, making space for you. Making space for Samantha. Making space for Elena. We want to make space for you. Make space for Melinda. And so that's a community. And because a lot of people talk about belonging, but almost on this sort of abstract theoretical, but haven't put this to practice. I like to say that I have put this to practice because the people in our community journey with us for years. In fact, they call us not just community, but family. And this is the image I have. You wouldn't know this. This gentleman here is a CEO. He's speaking to another person who's not a CEO, just pretty much starting out in their career. But we think about community, we think about belonging as a circle of relationships and friendships. Not a triangle, but a circle. And that's a key with belonging. In an organization that has hierarchy, you can't get around that. Yes, you're going to have hierarchy because someone has to call the shots, but your attitude is always certain. Or for those who subscribe to servant leadership, it's an inverted pyramid. Whatever the metaphor, you're not looking down at someone, you're bringing them into community. So let me ask you a few questions here. What was the experience like when you were the odd person out and didn't belong or fit in at work or maybe at school? Think about that. Or maybe the next question you may want to think about, what created those barriers at work or at school for you or others not to belong or fit in? And by the way, if you've never experienced any barriers, count yourself fortunate. But now I want you to empathize. What could create those barriers for those who look like me, who look like the other? You name it. Poor, rich, Black, Indian, Muslim, Christian. Male, female, young, old. We all come with some challenges where we don't feel like we belong. You know that sometime in your own family, you feel like there's barriers for you in fitting in. And are you seeing the same barriers in your field or organization? If so, name them. All right, you thought about it a little bit. I want to challenge you. And if you say I'm not a leader, I'm just an expert. Most of you, a lot of you are entrepreneurs, and you are starting your business. And I would offer that it starts, these things you start today, because once you build the jumbo jet, it's kind of hard to retrofit belonging and culture at that point. It's really hard. So if you're starting out in your building, build it today. If you're a leader who inherits something that is really a mess, it's going to take some time, but you have to now, for you have to be intentional, because it's not going to happen by happenstance. And for those who are not maybe in a leadership position, it doesn't mean the person beside you, the colleague, person here, you can't wrap your arm around them, proverbially speaking, and say that, hey, you belong here. So I want to say, like, you can create belonging in the workplace by be willing to go first and make space. Know your people's stories beyond the surface. Open up courageous conversations and spaces for heart work. Ooh, heart work. That means, like, these are the things that stuff in the reality of the life. Your mother just passed away. Oh my goodness. Did you get an opportunity to talk to anyone? If you're not, I'm here for you. Oh, your children just graduated from school. Fantastic. If there's room and you feel like I could, if you won't mind, I'd love to be there and see that early achievement. Hard work. Hard work of, like, why do we have discrimination and harassment in our workplaces? The women on our floor are talking about it, and we as men are being silenced. What are we going to do about this? Can we have the hard conversation? And so now we are co-creating this vision of belonging that speaks to all, not just some. And so it's a constant adaptation or accommodation, not losing who you are as a community, because you have an identity. But just like a marriage, or just like any family, you're in a marriage, you're taking two different lives, and each person has to figure out how to accommodate and adapt to create an identity. Doesn't lose yourself, but you're augmenting yourself. And then when you add children or in-laws, for some who may say who are fortunate, maybe some who are not fortunate, but let's assume you're all fortunate to have in-laws, you are creating another community of identities. And so you need to do this together, not apart. And you, as a leader, you must go first. The CEO, if you're president, you're the CEO or CFO. And I'm talking to some CFOs here because sometimes you put money before people. Don't do that. That's not going to create a space of belonging. And as hard as it is because you are the numbers person, I challenge you, see the humanity of it all. As you make cuts, please see the humanity of it all. So I share those things with you because the space that I create in terms of Connect Ontario, and as I share in my podcast in the Coach's Corner, as I speak around the world to beat the drum, not just talk about belonging in some abstract way, but some real ways. I'll share this. During the time of the pandemic, of course, we didn't have an opportunity to meet each other in person. So we had to find alternate means, alternate channels to communicate. Fortunate for us as Connect Ontario, we always had a way to meet virtually, but usually through a Polycom, a telephone. Really, the platform of Zoom wasn't fully formed, and there's Skype, but that wasn't really too well. Sorry, Skype, that's why I know you're out of business. But just to say that we didn't use that because of spotty. The technology wasn't really robust, let's say it that way. But when we did that, and we were on Zoom, or we were on some other teleconference, or I should say televideo, I remember one lady writing to us, commenting that what we did saved her life because she had no community, she had no belonging. We created space for her. While her workplace were trying to figure it out, we created the space for her because we made the room. You see this circle here? That's what we're talking about. And so I thank you for the opportunity, for allowing me to be in your space. I hope that you felt that what I share to you belongs to you. And I may not see you specifically, we may never meet, but I do hope that the words I share would stay with you and that I would inform you to be the best leaders you can be, to create a home away from home. And I hope I show some practical tips how. Knowing the stories, being curious and vulnerable, and knowing people's life outside of work. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on the Coach's Corner, and on all your platforms, Spotify, Apple, so forth. But I hope I get the contact and talk to you someday if you want me to share with you and your organization further on some of these principles and tips. Thank you. I see some questions there, and then what does belonging mean to you?
Yes, Daniel.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much for your valuable time, Daniel. And we have a few questions from our audience, Daniel. I want to ask you one.
Okay.
Does your workplace make space for personal stories and diverse experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. We do, and we're intentional about it. And you probably say, okay, I said yes, but what does that look like? It looks like simply in a team meeting, stopping and asking people how was their evening, how was their weekend, and if as a leader, remembering what happened the week before when someone said, hey, my child is graduating in a few days, in the following meeting is to say, hey, how was that graduation? That's how you invite the personal stories, because people will share more than you've asked because you said, oh, you gave me permission.
You have done a very good job in this presentation, and thank you so much for your valuable time, Daniel. And be on the backstage and please join the next session.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your question, and I hope to talk to you sometime soon again. Enjoy your day, everyone. Happy Friday Eve.
Yeah, thank you so much.